don't prepare. Just be willing to trust that process, sit down and have genuine conversations, and then let's mine the story out of that.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know I'm also known as the speech coach for executives because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And we do that through one-on-one coaching or group training for your team. I feature communication experts from around the world on this podcast, and my guest today is Pat Taggart. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Pat. 1, he has been creating authentic, unscripted content for businesses for over half his lifetime. And he tells me that half means 23 years, which means do the math. And 2, Pat detests corporate video, the evil. And his goal is to create the polar opposite. And 3, Pat has never had a cup of coffee, but he happily orders chocolate milk without shame when he's at the diner. Pat Taggart, welcome to Your Intended Message.
George, thank you for that. I love Your Intended Message, so this is an honor to be on the show, and I also do shamelessly love chocolate milk.
And I can't fault you for loving chocolate milk. It's been a long time since I've had some myself, but I do enjoy it. And I must say that my favorite ice cream is always chocolate. Always chocolate. Forget all the other ones.
The classic.
You
won't
bet.
be let down.
Pat, I'm curious, what is it that you label as a corporate video? What's the evil in that? What is it that you detest about it and why? And I know there's a few questions in there.
Yeah, so the easiest way to spot a corporate video is the choreographed handshake. No corporate video exists without one of those terrible choreographed handshakes, right? Where people make the eye contact for 8 seconds that we never do in real life. But really, it goes back to 2 things when you think about corporate video. Number 1, and the most insidious of all, is the script. And here's how I got to this, George. Out of school, I went to school to be a reporter. It lasted 4 months. I clearly was not right for that industry. And so I started a wedding video business and very quickly realized, hey, there's no weddings happening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I better find something to do with my time or I am not going to be able to pay my bills. So the answer was, of course, corporate video. So I would go out to these companies and meet these really wonderful, smart, engaging people. And then we would roll the cameras and everything would fall apart. It turned into what looked like a hostage video. I mean, these people were sweating and, they were stumbling over their words. These people could talk about their organizations all day long without pause. But as soon as they had to look into the lens of a camera and recite a script that wasn't genuine to who they are, they fell apart. And so typically you spot a corporate video because people are parroting a script and they're staring terrified into the lens of a camera. All we did was say, hey, let's engage these folks in really genuine conversations. It's our job to mine the story from that because the story already exists. We don't have to create a story. Every business on the planet has a story. The job is just to have great conversations and then give it to creatives to mine that story and stop making them look into the lens of a camera. If they just look off 6 inches, do it documentary style, they're talking to a person, which is way more natural.
Why do you think people get so intimidated by the camera?
Yeah, so I talk about this with folks a lot. It's your same face and your same voice that you'll take to a meeting like we're having now, right, virtually. You'll take it into the room with all of your employees. You'll take it into a meeting to recruit or to sell. But that same face, when you get on video, and that same voice, no, I can't share that with the world. You're already sharing it. Here's what I learned. We have no idea what we actually sound like. There's science to the way that we hear our own voices versus the way the rest of the world hears our voices. So as I'm talking to you now, George, I feel like I have this really strong, bassy voice. When I listen to this back, I'm going to say I sound like a 16-year-old boy. That's just the way it is, right? That is my voice. You're not thinking at all about my voice. You're thinking about my message. The rest of the world is thinking about my message. The only person that's really thrown off by the sound of my voice is me. And so my biggest tip to people is if you don't like the way that you look or sound on video, don't consume your own content because it's not for you. If you're creating content to consume yourself, you potentially could be a sociopath. And then we have much bigger problems than that. So get your message out there. If you're not, you're only hurting your organization and the people that depend on you and work alongside you. This stuff about my voice and my face just does not hold up.
And I believe that that's a important message for people to hear, that your content is not for you. And interesting enough, I see a parallel with when I coach people on their presentation, their messaging. Your presentation is not for you, it's for the audience. It's not what you feel like, it's what they feel like and what they understood, what they took away. And I see a common theme there. When you first started shooting these corporate scripted videos, at what point did you say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't working, there's something wrong here, this is really messed up?
Yeah, when I was embarrassed to show people and they were embarrassed to show people, I think sometimes organizations fall into this trap where someone says, you should have a video. And they're like, yeah, we need to do a video. Let's check that box. A video should be a tool. It should do one of two things, right? It should help you solve a business problem, or it should help you take advantage of an opportunity that you have, right? To capitalize on an opportunity in your market. If it's not doing one of those two things, what's the point? Unless it's internal communication, right? And you're trying to educate people on benefits or whatever it may be. But if it's external facing and it's not doing one of those two things, what's the point? And so it was really out of necessity, George. Like, these videos, they were not good. They were embarrassing to me. They were embarrassing to clients because there was nothing genuine about them. At some point, sometimes I'd show up and they'd be like, let's write a script, and there'd be lawyers in the room, right? I mean, come on. When you have a lawyer sitting across from you and you're writing a script for your organization, the train is off the rails. Okay, just stop. You're better off doing nothing. I had a client come in not long ago and they said, hey, we're about to be unionized. We want to create a video to educate our people about what a union really is and why we don't think it's in their best interest to unionize. I said, okay, who are you sending in? Well, we're sending in our chief operating officer. Great. I'll talk to him. We'll get that message. The day before, they said, okay, our lawyers have written the script and we'd like you to put this on teleprompter. And I said, please don't do that. Well, why? We want to make sure that it's word perfect. Well, it doesn't need to be word perfect. What it needs is to be genuine. It needs to be conversational. Would you ever get one of these people in a hallway or by their car when they're leaving at the end of the day, pull a script out of your pocket and read them what the lawyer wrote? They would think you are completely crazy. But people do really irrational things when cameras come out. It's just a replacement of face-to-face communication. That's all it should be.
And I can see the lawyers are so concerned about the specific words, but what's more important than the specific words?
That people trust you, that they feel like you're speaking to them as a human being and not speaking down to them or trying to manipulate them. Here's the other thing, George. You touched on something really important. Very, very rarely are we creating video that's live. If you work on the news, it's live. Right now, you and I, right? I mean, we're just free flowing. We're not doing take after take. When you stand up in front of your teams, it's live ammo. When you film a video, sometimes you can do it 10 times and the world's only going to see the good one. It's a really, really nice kind of easy landing for people, and they don't look at it that way. Your nerves shouldn't peak when you do this. It should be like, oh, okay, man, where else in my life can I just kind of experiment with things, and if we don't like it, we just don't use it?
Should one ever record a scripted video?
Well, I think, voiceover, we do a decent amount of voiceover videos for clients. A voiceover, a script is totally appropriate, right? One caveat, though, that script needs to be conversational. If you're talking about so-and-so can fill all your whatever needs, most of the time when you hear the word needs, then you're going into that territory that you don't want to be in, right? Just make sure that as you read it aloud, you wouldn't be embarrassed saying this to a friend, to a family, and that the organization, people say, yeah, that's us, right? I mean, it's a really easy barometer. You can read it on paper and say, that sounds like a corporate video. That's probably not what you should film. What you should film is something where everybody can listen and say, yeah, okay, that's us. And you don't have to get every piece of video of information into your videos. That's something that people try to do, is cram everything in. These things don't exist in a vacuum, right? It's not like there's a video out in space and there's no supporting text with it and there's no backlink to your website and there's no call to action for a conversation. Like, all you want people to do in most cases when you're creating a video is like you and trust you, right? And then if they can do that, they're going to want to talk more. And so these things are just baited hooks, really.
A video doesn't live by itself. And what I'm hearing is it doesn't live by itself. Its purpose is to do what?
Its purpose is to make you say, I think these people can probably help me. I'm looking for something, or I want that if you weren't looking for something. And then let me learn more. Let me figure out what next steps is. And, if you roll these things out right, there's typically another conversation to be had. And so maybe that's an email, maybe that's a phone call, whatever it might be. But you just want people to get kind of, okay, I see what they're offering. I see what they do. I think there's a fit for this in my life. Let me try to get to these folks.
For business, is the best use of a video to reach new clients, new customers?
It's funny, and especially ever since COVID, George, the most work that we've done has actually been on the recruiting side. Yeah, because it's never been harder, and hopefully it's gotten a little bit easier. But, we went through a period where it was never harder in the history of the world to recruit talent. And because a lot of people weren't working and maybe didn't want to work and were incentivized not to work, and, their idea of work changed. They got to stay home and they thought, wow, I just never want to go back anywhere ever again. That doesn't work for every business. And so companies would say, hey, how can we have a great story to tell. We're having a really hard time standing out from the pack. How do we stand out from the pack? How do we use video to attract great people? And the answer is very simple. You have to tell the story of your culture. Every organization has one. Every organization doesn't have a great one, but you have to tell the story of your culture. And you have to give people a realistic idea of what it's like to work there. And the word realistic there is really important, because where these things go wrong is people say, we want to attract people. Let's paint the rosiest picture we can of this place. And then people get there and they're like, oh, but I didn't know about this, this, and this. And then they leave. And then what's the cost of attrition? In most places, it's at least $30,000 per replacement when you factor in the cost that you had to use to onboard them, the resources, the time down that you're not going to have them once they leave. And so really what you want to do is not only talk about what's great about that organization and working there, but you really want to zero in on who's not a fit. And if you can hit on who isn't a fit, then people will self-select. You don't want to spend 1 second vetting someone who was never going to be a good culture fit for your organization.
Oh, that's interesting. So if someone's watching the video, it's actually a good result if they say, I don't want to work there.
Absolutely.
I couldn't stand that place. So
Absolutely.
Now you've saved yourself a lot of aggravation of bringing them on, pretending to be nice and going through the struggle and then letting them go and then having to go through that whole process again.
Yeah. I mean, I remember we did one for an industrial waste organization. Their folks wear respirators. We said in the video, you can't have facial hair. If you like to have facial hair, this is not going to be a fit. You can't wear it with the respirator, right? You can't do it. And so, boom, right away, people are like, I'm not going to shave my beard. I've had a beard for 15 years, Perfect. Keep your beard. You wouldn't be a great fit here. Best of luck in your search. Say that person, gets to the table and they have an hour blocked with your head of HR. Man, what a terrible waste of resource that is. And what a waste of time it is for that person. It's not fair to the candidate that they got all the way there and didn't know that.
So how can they tell the culture story? What works?
Well, the culture story should not be told by the senior leaders because culture exists in your folks that do the work every day. They are the culture, right? The job of senior leadership is to nurture that culture and to help make sure that the guardrails stay in place, that culture can live and grow and thrive. But it's the folks that are doing the work every day that create that culture. And so the best way to tell the culture story is very simple. You sit across. What we do is we sit across from the people in the organization, have them look at us, never a lens, and talk about why they work there. What attracted them there? Tell me about your day to day. What's your favorite part about your job? Who wouldn't be a fit for this work? Why does this work give you purpose? Which is the most important question, because people want to know that they're coming to work for something other than a paycheck, and that's purpose. And so if you're recognized for the great work that you do, if you have purpose, which means you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you have room to learn and grow within an organization, those three, recognition, purpose, and growth and development, then most likely you have a wonderful culture, and you have to tell that story to people, because maybe someone's coming in at a job level that's not ideal for them. But if you can paint a great picture of where they can be in 1 or 2 or 5 years, then chances are they'd be willing to go along for that ride. But the only way you can do that is by having people that have gone along for that ride tell that story, not a senior leader, not the CEO saying, we have room to learn and grow here. That is totally empty, even if it's true.
What have been some of the best culture stories that you've heard? Can you give us an example or two?
Yeah, absolutely. I did one not too long ago for a company called Cypress Door and Glass, and they are they fix commercial doors. So think about your supermarket. If that big sliding door goes down, this company goes out and fixes it. They're in just outside of Philadelphia. We're in the Northeast, okay? Not a tropical area. Their shirts are like these Hawaiian shirts with flamingos on them. They stand out like sore thumbs, right? But they have this really like cool, like their owner's a veteran, so like they're veteran owned, so they have this giant flag flying, and they're walking around these flamingo shirts, and they're just like, look, we're different, and they embrace that, and they're trying to attract people that are different. They love to have fun, right? Like every Friday, they unwind with pizza and bourbon, and they talk about the week and talk about their wins. That's cool. They're like, let's feature that. Halfway through one of the interviews, a guy came running through the background in a banana costume, and 2 seconds later, a guy in a gorilla costume is chasing him. And this is something that, like, the person that we're like, oh my gosh, and the person I'm interviewing just rolls their eyes. They're like, this is like every day. We're not putting on a show for you guys. These people are like just goofy, fun-loving people. That's who they are. But that's who they want also. I did another one recently where they really just focused on if you don't like this, don't come here. If you don't like this, don't come here. And it was a quick hitter. It was a company called Mobile Outfitters, and the video was only 70 seconds long, I think. But it was like, hey, dress however you want. You know, if you're looking for some dress formal, you know, don't work here. Work wherever you want. You like it at our office? Cool. You don't like it at our office? Fine. You know, that's fine. Mistakes are encouraged. You know, if you're not willing to make a mistake, please don't work here. And so it was just like boom, 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 boom. But by the end of those 70 seconds, you had a really good idea of whether or not you would fit there.
That sounds like a valuable 70 seconds, because I can see people watching that video and going, oh, this is different. I like it. These people, or, oh, yuck, not for me.
George, that is absolutely the purpose. If you can get to the end of those 70 and you can say yay or nay, mission accomplished. Think about how much time and energy that saves both parties just by being able to put that out there.
Now, I'm thinking, if you put that in a written document, those same statements, don't work here, this, it would have an effect, but not as effective as watching a video. Why do you think the video is stronger? Well,
you're getting to see faces, right? And so typically a document's written by one person. So now sadly we don't even know if it's written by a person. So you could put in like, hey, create yays or nays for a culture and whatever in this industry, but you're seeing faces, and because it's unscripted, you know that it's genuine. You can tell that these people aren't reciting something they've worked on, because there's natural pauses and laughter. And people that work at a Mobile Outfitters as a phone protection company, they don't have formal acting skills. Like you'd have to be a really good actor to be able to work in like these natural pauses and laughter into something that you're trying to regurgitate. So it's seeing faces. On the video side, we also have the secret weapon called music. And so music subliminally tells people how to feel. And there's this really cool, you remember The Shining with Jack Nicholson, right? Terrifying. There's this spoof on it that I saw on YouTube a long time ago, and they just changed the music to something like really happy. And all of a sudden it seems like this like goofy family romantic comedy about this struggling writer who's trying to write a book. And so like music immediately puts you in a headspace of how do I feel? And so in addition to great sound bites from people and telling this cool story about this culture and giving you information, you're also creating a mood for people and telling them how to feel. So it is, not a bad way, but it also, it kind of like manipulates your feelings a little bit. And so it's a very, very, very effective tool.
And wow, that is an aha moment for me. Yeah, you're right. And I can certainly think about how music makes me feel, the music I listen to. And there are times of the day that, where I'm feeling my energy is getting low, where I listen to my music that makes me feel better. And there are other times where I don't want to be distracted, so I play a different type of music that allows me to be thoughtful and work. And I can see how listening to music while we're watching helps set the tone. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, that music from The Shining, if I heard that, I'd go, ooh, what's going to happen?
Yeah. And it just had a totally different vibe. It was like this happy, light, jolly, kind of quirky, fun film.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and of course, I'll never forget the music from the movie Jaws.
Oh boy, yeah.
I'm not going to listen to that before going into the water, or going into a shower. It's like
I know that ruined the ocean for a lot of people. Just those just couple chords, right? It ruined the ocean for a lot of people for many, many years.
How long should a video be? How do you decide?
That's such a great question. It should be as long as the content is great and not a second longer. It's so funny. I get calls or emails all the time from people. We want to create a 7-minute video about this. And what I want to say without offending them is, how do you know? Do you know what I mean? Like, why? What is, so you're telling me that 7's going to accomplish your goal, but not 6 or 8, right? No way you can do it in 4. I'm working on a project right now that we filmed 12 people in an organization called Cressa. They're in commercial real estate, and just had unscripted conversations with those folks. It was about 2 hours and 20 minutes of content, cut down to 40 minutes of really usable sound bites. And then ultimately we're going to make what's probably about a 2 to 3 minute brand video, right? Like a who is Cressa. Now, from that content, they're also going to wind up with like 25 pieces of content they can put on like LinkedIn and whatnot. But you see the ratios, right? Like it's a lot pared down to a little. But that video will be just as long as it needs to be. If I can do it in 2 minutes, I'll do it in 2. I don't want it to be 2:05 if it doesn't need to be, because people's attention spans, man, and you know this, George, like I'm sure you speak with the work that you do in educating folks on how to give successful presentations. You know how quickly they can lose a room. And so, man, you have to keep people locked in. That's why it's so important that no seconds are wasted. If there's a lull, you have to get rid of it, right? Because it's hard to get people back once you lose them, as you know.
Very true. And many time when I'm working with my clients, or I'm sitting in watching another presentation, I notice how speakers tend to especially waste the beginning of their talk.
Yeah.
And I learned from an author, and editor of a friend of mine who's either written or edited over 250 books. And he gave me this insight. He said, when authors start writing a book, the first chapter is for them. So when it comes to me, I trash the first chapter because the reader doesn't need it.
That's fantastic. I love that. You know what's so funny about that is I find that a lot. I do a lot of audio. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I typically hate the beginning. Like the beginning's very self-serving. And that's, I think, why TED Talks are so wonderful, because you don't have a lot of time to waste and people are jumping right in, right? Like the first minute is typically very good. But normally it's like, here's who I am, here's my family. That's wonderful, right? You're not helping anybody in the room.
Yeah, cliche phrase that's a clear warning of wasted time is, and now a little bit about me. Guess what? Great. Nobody cares.
That's fantastic. I love that, man. I have a great friend who presents all the time, and he does that. You have just given me the courage to reach out to him after this conversation and blame this totally on you and tell him what you said. Okay. Because I've been thinking it, but it's easier coming. I can blame it on you and he'll never meet you probably.
Please do. Please spread the message. And I believe that phrase started with the phenomenon of the social media experts and all these people who were the gurus who were plugging their online programs, because they'd always start their webinar with that little bit about me. And then 10 minutes later, they're still talking about themselves. And I'm thinking, that's not what I call a little bit.
No, it's true. No, that's people's favorite topic, right? Is themselves.
Yeah. And we don't care. And here's the silly thing. The better way to do that, to demonstrate your expertise, and you probably do this with your when you're filming people, is don't say I did this, I did that, I am. Instead, tell a story.
Yes, sir.
That illustrates that. And then people draw their own conclusion. Oh, I can see how you helped that person. I can see how you fixed that issue.
Yes. And you can do it in a way where you make the opposite party the hero too, right?
Very much so.
Be self-serving. And so that's people's fear sometimes. Like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm pompous. Put all the glory on them. Give them all the shine, because that shine bounces right back to you.
When you are filming people and interviewing them, what type of questions do you use to get the best response from them? Because they probably start off, they're kind of guarded, they stumble. How do you get to go deeper? What are those phrases that you use?
Well, you're right that sometimes people get nervous. One trick I have for that is after a couple of questions, I always tell them they're doing great. And even if they're doing awful, George, I always say, hey, you're really good at this. Do you do a lot of video? And you can see their shoulders just go, no, I don't do any video. Thank you for telling me that. I feel like I'm doing awful. No, you're doing fantastic. You're one of the best ones we've had so far. And it becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? As far as questions to get deeper with people, I think that a mistake, and I've certainly had to learn this over 23 years, and I think Oprah mentioned it one time when she talked about interviewing. The default is when you start interviewing people is you want to ask like the most creative, probing question there is. The best questions are typically pretty simple, like we're there to get a story and they have the story. And so a successful interview for me is keeping that conversation going, keeping eye contact, helping people forget as much as they can that they're being filmed. And the less words that I say, the better the conversation probably was. And, you always hear kind of why is maybe the best question there is. Well, why? Why did you guys decide that? Why did you do that? Explain to me how that, and so just be interested. And the other thing from an interviewer standpoint is you have to give people the energy that you want back in return. And so when I get done an interview, I'm exhausted. Like after these 12 interviews we did last week, the video I'm cutting now, I came home and I was like, hey guys, to my family, I love you all, but I can't make eye contact with any of you probably for the rest of the night because it's exhausting. Like you have to give. If someone's speaking too low, I'll raise my voice. If they're not smiling and I need them to, I will smile at you until you think I'm certifiably insane, right? So I am giving you the nonverbals or the verbals that I want in return. And that works, but it takes some energy. And finally, I'll never hold a list of questions across from somebody. My job is to learn all of that content and know exactly where we're trying to go beforehand. And the beauty of it not being live, George, is that we can stop at some point and say, hey, let's take an inventory of what we've talked about so far. I can reference notes then and say, we hit this, this, and this. Why don't we hit this? They're like, cool. Put my list back off to the side, back to eye contact, back to a smile and say, hey, tell me about this. Why are you so great at this? Again, putting shine on other people and making them feel like superheroes. It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it sounds like it's more than just pointing a camera and asking questions. You're more like a director to draw the energy and warmth out of them. Yeah,
I mean, director, shrink, however you want to put it, right? Like people have, in many cases, never, ever done this before. And people by nature want to know what they're walking into. And when you have an unscripted style where people are coming in and don't know the questions, it can be a little unnerving. And what we have to tell them is, hey, trust me, we're going to film for 10, 15 minutes. Maybe only a minute of this is going to see the light of day. where else in the world can you be good 10% of the time and that's considered a massive success? And they're like, oh, okay, I think I can be good 10% of the time, right? But it's a different approach. The easier way to do it is to script every word, to know exactly what you're going to get, to wind up with really stiff, cringy, as my kids say, content that you don't want to share, but you know exactly what you're going to get. That's just not what we do. I don't believe that that is the best way to present an organization, because again, the story already exists. Why are you trying to pin it down? You miss out on so much spontaneity when you do that. The best comments we get all the time from people are stuff that we would have never thought we were going to get. Things that we learn every day. And then most importantly, we always end an interview with, hey, you did awesome. What did we forget? Like, because you know this organization so much better than I do. What did we miss? Then telling them they did great, telling them it's basically done and anything they say from there on out is just a bonus. Man, I can't tell you how many times the best clips have come from that, from them saying, oh, there's this one thing. It just happened last week. I said to a woman, hey, you did really, really wonderful, Rosella. What did we miss? Is there anything? And she said, yes, we pay for ourselves. There hasn't been a single case that we've worked on over time where we didn't have an ROI greater than what the client spent on our services. It might seem like an ad to bring us on as brokers or project managers, but we always pay for ourselves and then some. I would have never gotten that. Never in a million years. But I promise you it's going to make that 2 or 3 minute video.
And you mentioned earlier about filming over 2 hours and coming down to a couple minutes and maybe a series of clips. And it's important for people to understand that for that 2-minute video that gets produced, it could have been 2 hours of filming, and that's normal. That's okay. Because not everything you say is profound or worth putting on video.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about, they do the same thing with films. There's a reason why, the entire scene will be cut, right? And in those cases, for a Hollywood film to cut scenes, that probably cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars to film those and full days on set, right? That they just don't make it. You don't know until you really sit down. And it's not always the best sound bites that make it, George. You're really trying to have pieces that work well with each other. You're trying to put together a puzzle, right? And so what you want is people finishing each other's sentences. A really well-told video seems like these folks are just finishing each other's sentences and kind of know what each other are going to say. And that's why you have them all talk about similar topics. And when I go to edit, I'm putting everything in buckets. So for the video we're creating now, we have a whole bucket about their customers, for example. And then we're going to take that and we're going to say, okay, not which are the best clips here. Which are the best clips that play most nicely, that are going to tell us who are their customers? Are they industry specific or industry agnostic? What size are they? And how do all these customers fit together? How do they provide great service to these customers? And so it's just really putting together pieces of a puzzle. But that's not anything that the client should have to even think about. All they should think about is sitting in a chair and talking about the things that they do every day and do really well and do differently than their competition. That's it.
Do bloopers work?
Hell yeah, bloopers work. Yeah, absolutely. Clients ask for them all the time. It's fun. Sometimes we'll start a video with a blooper, right? Sometimes we'll start a video with something funny and then get into the content, because it just lets people be like, oh, cool. Hey, I'm not watching a corporate video. Whew. Okay, this is great. Now I can focus in. I think I'm getting real genuine content today.
For people who like to learn more about Pat Taggart and his company, Sky Blue Creative, you can find him at, guess what? skybluecreative.com, and you can find that link in the description below. Pat, as we prepare to wrap up, if you're sitting down with a business leader that wants to get better results from their video, perhaps they simply want to present themselves to the marketplace, attract more clients. And if you could give them 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice about how to prepare themselves and their team for this video, what would that advice be?
The biggest piece of advice is don't prepare. Just trust the process. If you're working with someone like us at Sky Blue Creative, don't prepare. Just be willing to trust that process, sit down and have genuine conversations, and then let's mine the story out of that. Now, there's no harm in saying, hey, I'd really like to mention this when I go into the room. Give yourself a note on that, right? But man, George, it is proven time and time again that the more you prepare for these things and the more you have specific lines in your head and try to spit those out, the stiffer and less genuine your content will be.
Good advice. My guest today is Pat Taggart, reminding you that you don't need to create the story because the story already exists. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.